Okay, so good morning everyone and welcome to the first ECF plenary session. We've got Brandon Clarke, International Master, here to consolidate our learning on attacking the king that you've been hopefully working through throughout January. So for today, we can get you to talk. You just need to raise your hand and we'll allow you to talk, but it's better to communicate in the chat. Brandon's going to talk you through the examples and then you can write your answers in the chat. So we're going to get started now. At the end of this session, there'll be a 15-minute break, and then we'll have Matthew Sadler and Natasha Reagan here to talk to you. And then I'll go through the January test and a few other things at the end. So like I said, if you've got any questions, then just ask, and I'm manning all of the chat, so you'll be able to communicate that way. So over to you, Brandon. I'm very excited.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, everybody. So today we have a very exciting topic on how to attack the king, of course, a very important one. And so what I've done is created a study with all the very important themes you would need to know. So we've got attacking an uncastled king, we've got attacking weak point, the strong point, fianchettoed structure. Flat castle kings, that just means, like, for example, if white was castled like this, the pawns are all in a straight line. Okay, then we've got things like the queenside one as well, queenside king, premature attacks. So I've included some of my own games in here as well. So we've got plenty of content to get through. The first position that we have is taken from a very famous game. So I'm sure you've all would have seen this at some point. And so I'm just going to walk you through this first example. And then for the next ones, we're going to kind of open the floor up to you guys and see if you can guess the moves. Okay. I've also put some of the attacking principles here in the chat, so you can always kind of refer back to those. These are very important principles to kind of keep in mind when you're trying to attack. Okay. So the first game we have is a famous game of Paul Morphy's, where he played against the Duke of, what was it, Brunswick in France. And here we see a great example of the fact black has not yet castled. And it's not only that he's not castled, it's actually that he's quite a long way from getting castled, right? He needs to get his queen out of the way, then the bishop, and then the king. So he's a long way from castling, and he's made too many pawn moves here. Played his pawn to b5. And so Paul Morphy rightly decided just to sacrifice in order to open up the position and keep this kind of momentum going. So black recaptured, white gave a check, knight to d7, white now castled queenside, providing a threat. So it's very important when you have the initiative or this momentum that you keep making threats. You've got to keep it going, right? If you do something too slow, then you allow your opponent to kind of get recoordinated, and yeah, they should be able to survive. So here Morphy had this nice idea, rook takes d7, right? All about bringing all your pieces into the attack. The rook on h1 needs to come to d1. So the rook has vacated that square. Rook takes d7, rook to d1, queen to e6, bishop takes, knight takes. And now I'm sure you've all seen the finish here. Queen to b8, check, forcing knight to take, and rook to d8 mate. Okay, so nice. This is a great example because you'll notice that all of Paul's moves were based on keeping that momentum going. He kept making a threat, and therefore he never gave black a chance to even get the bishop developed or get his king castled. So it's a perfect example. Okay.
There's a question. All right. Could you have gone bishop d5 from Joseph? Could
I've gone bishop to d5? When was that? You mean on move 11, right? Here? Yeah. Yeah, bishop d5 actually looks like a strong move as well, to be fair. Although you've got to be a little bit careful because if you're under attack, you would want to exchange queens. That's a very important theme. So if you go bishop to d5, the first move that comes to mind is I need to get myself out of this pin and to try and save my rook. So I'm going to go queen b4 check, right? Now, usually when you've got a situation where you want to, there's a capture going on, you want to try to capture last if you can, because by capturing last, you usually get a more active piece or position. So for example, if white captures first here, black captures last, his bishop now gets very active. Let's say you block that check, all of a sudden the bishop disappears and black is completely fine. So bishop d5, yeah, is a good suggestion, but unfortunately doesn't quite work.
And I'll just take a question. Hand just went up there, or it's gone down now. Okay, we'll carry on. That was a good question, Joseph. Thank you.
All right, so shall we move on to the first example, Sarah?
Yes, that would be great. So if you've got questions, because people are just asking in the chat, and you can't speak using your microphone, but if you raise your hand and we think it's a good time, then you can just raise your hand and we can unmute you if you want to ask a question. But the easiest way is to do it in the chat. So yeah, Brandon, good idea. Let's move on.
Okay, perfect. All right, so our first example then, again we're trying to attack the uncastled king. This position is taken from the Mora Gambit opening, which I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with. And so white is down a pawn, but in return he has a lead in development, right? He's got 3 things developed here, but also you count the castled king as another thing as well. So we've got basically 4 against 2, right? So it's important that white uses that momentum and tries to create some problems for his opponent. So over to you guys. What do you think white should play? You can type that in the chat section.
Yeah, maybe write your answer just to panelists, which is Brandon and I, and then you won't give away to the whole class.
Yeah, don't tell them your secrets. I'll put a timer on so then you guys can.
Pressure.
No pressure. It's like a countdown.
A few different types of suggestions, so it's going to be good to go through.
Yeah, I've got my chat open on the other screen here.
Excellent. No, we can't see your video. There's quite a few questions about that. It's just Brandon and I whose videos are on show. But we can always invite you to the stage and you can show your video.
We've got a wide variety of suggestions coming through.
Yeah.
All right, 10 more seconds. No pressure. Think fast.
I don't get what we're meant to be writing. Just the move that you'd play for white in this position. Remember, we're focusing on attacking the king, and it's very clear here that black has not developed the kingside pieces at all. So we want to take advantage of that.
All right. Okay, so let's go through some of the suggestions then. We've got rook e1, we had knight d5, bishop d5, bishop g5, e5, bishop f4 suggested as well, knight e5. Blimey, how are we going to get through all these? I think that was it. Okay, perfect. All right, well, let's start off. Well, knight e5 is just unfortunately hanging a knight, so that's not going to work. E5 feels a little bit slow to me. I mean, you're moving another pawn. I think it's not necessarily a bad idea. You're gaining some space, and maybe you can then use this square and try to get into the weak d6 outpost. But yeah, it feels a little bit slow. Bishop g5, maybe that you're just helping them trade pieces at the moment. Bishop e7. Bishop f4, not so bad, but probably goes to go d6. Rook e1 is quite logical because this is where you're trying to create an x-ray. You've got an x-ray on the king. So that's not necessarily a bad idea. But yeah, I think the main thing here is to actually go knight to d5. And this is very, very common idea in a lot of Sicilian positions where you want to open up the position to get to this uncastled king. And the reason you need to do that is because if you can open up the position, then your heavy pieces, your rooks and your queen can start to have an influence. Right? That's something that a lot of people kind of don't quite understand. So your knight d5 is kind of the correct move, or correct idea at least. But I thought, okay, I quite like playing a4 first, just to try and make this knight d5 a little bit better. But yeah, okay, I'm not so bothered if you saw a4 or not. Okay, and now this is a nice example where black has to go knight a5. If he takes the knight, this is very, very risky, because after something like this, we just go d6, and after knight moves, just rook to e1 check, and already white's getting the piece back at the minimum. Okay, so
can I just interrupt for a minute?
Yeah.
Just a couple of questions. which you can answer when you want to. So why does A5 make it better? And I don't think we went through the move Queen E2 as well.
Queen E2. Yeah, so Queen E2 I think is just similar to Rook E1, right? And whenever you've got kind of a choice, I think it's better to put the kind of a weaker piece on the X-ray because it makes it like a lot more scary for your opponent. Just in general, because like imagine you've got queen on queen, this kind of X-ray, it doesn't really scare the queen. But if you manage to get a rook lined up with the queen, it's a lot more, scary for the black queen because of the lower value that's been attacking. Yeah, so A4 is kind of like a bit of a subtle nuance here, but the point is we're trying to provoke black to either to take and ruin his structure a little bit, or to play B4, and that way his pawn becomes a little bit more overextended. So it's not like the most obvious move in the world, but it just makes this whole knight d5 look a little bit better because now his pawn could be an extra target later on basically, or we can use this pawn as to help us attack as well. Okay, so yeah, here I had knight a5. White can now go bishop g5, keep that momentum going, and after something like f6, White has this crazy idea here, knight to e5, and all of a sudden everything is hanging for White, but it's a very difficult position for Black to play as well. Queen h5 check is threatened, and let's say they go something like g6 to try to stop that, then White can just keep that momentum going, and all of a sudden there's a checkmate on d7. Okay.
So I've got Mo Islam's got his hand raised, so I'll just allow him to talk. I think that's just one more question, and then we can move on.
Okay.
Okay. Well then, Mo, what would you like to say? You should be able to speak now.
Wait, wasn't knight to e5 and knight to d5, weren't they both Tal moves?
Tal? I'm not sure if Tal played. Maybe he has, I'm not sure.
But it's a similar idea. He kept on sacrificing pieces.
Yes, he did like sacrificing pieces. I'm sure Tal would find this move like instantly. No doubt about that.
Great knowledge, that's good. Looking at your key games. Thank you.
All right, let's go to the next example then. So this one is taken from the Evans Gambit. Again, White is down material. At the moment, he's down 2 pawns, but White has a massive lead in development, and Black is 1 move away from castling. So again, it's absolutely vital that we use this momentum. So White to move. Who can find the right idea here? Get my timer ticking.
Okay, so just message all the panelists, please. Your answer.
Blimey, we've got a sacrifice. It's very brave.
A range of moves there coming through.
Yep.
I wonder if anyone here plays the Evans Gambit.
My students do.
No, do they?
Yeah. Unless they play d4, of course. Then. Yeah, I think it's a good opening. It's very easy for Black to go wrong. Like in this example, Black's got too greedy, and now White's.
It's White to move, Rhea, and find the best move.
Okay, all right, time's up. So let's start looking through some of the answers. We have bishop a3. We have rook e1. Oops. Bishop h6 is a move. Let's go with this arrow. Got e5. Got knight d5. And I think that was everything. Knight g5 was also suggested. Oh, and we had this sacrifice idea, which takes f7.
Quite a few people said that, actually. That surprised me.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so let's start off with the ones which I think are easiest. So bishop takes f7 is an interesting idea, but unfortunately it doesn't quite work. Black can just recapture, right? And we don't want to be liquidating any pieces when we're attacking. It's very important to keep pieces on the board, unless we're getting something for it, right? In this case, okay, queen takes, queen could take, king takes. We stop them from castling, but queens have come off the board, and that's yeah, definitely not favorable for us. Knight g5 looks like an interesting idea as well, but probably they can just castle, and we haven't really prevented them from doing that. Bishop h6 looks like they can just take a free piece. Rook e1, again, not necessarily a bad idea, but I think it's a bit slow. They can just castle, right? So it's very important we stop them castling. Bishop a3 is actually not a bad idea at all. If they go d6 and e5, yeah, it looks really scary. But maybe they can play bishop b4 instead, which is that might hold on. So I don't think I like that as much. So yeah, here the best move is just to go knight to d5, similar to before. e5 is also not a bad suggestion. What would black play there? Maybe he can just ignore it. Maybe it goes knight g4. Well, actually, first I should take this knight, I think. So if you go e5, probably I should first take the knight, and then after queen takes, move my knight somewhere. Maybe, but it's not. Yeah, it's definitely not bad suggestion at all. e5. Okay, so knight to d5 was played. Okay, black has to take. White recaptures, keeping that momentum going. Remember, it's very important to keep making threats. Knight to e5. Okay, we take, which is technically still kind of a threat because we've won material, so forces black to recapture. Bishop b2, queen to g5. Again, black is ready to castle. So this is another very important moment. I think maybe I'll just walk you through the remainder of this one, just because we've got lots of examples to get through. So here, white played queen to a3, attacking the bishop, stopping black from castling. So multi-purpose move. It's important to get rid of the bishop, so now we can bring one of the rooks over to e1 to deliver the check, king to d8. And so now at least white has achieved something, right? It takes a little bit more pressure off because we've managed to prevent the king from castling, forever. Now we're going to start using some deflection ideas. H4, deflect the queen away from the defense of poor Gary over there. And after something like rook to g8, we have the final finish, queen g3. We sacrifice the queen, right? Because we can't even recapture. We're in a very nasty pin. But luckily we have bishop f6, checkmate. So just kind of goes to show another nice example from the Evans Gambit of attacking play. All right. We have some questions.
Yeah, somebody said if e5, b takes c3, then e takes f6. I'm not sure which position he's talking about.
If e5, bishop takes an, okay, yeah, so he's talking about right at the beginning. Okay. So back here, if I e5, bishop takes, he wanted to take f6. Okay, but maybe I just go queen takes f6. And then this is hanging. So you probably have to go rook b1, I would imagine. And then I just castle, and that should be okay.
Yeah, that looks good. And then couldn't you just do bishop takes g7 before h4, or is h4 needed? A question from Joseph.
Yeah, it's actually, yeah, it's a good suggestion. It doesn't really matter which way you do it, actually. You can play bishop g7 first. I've always preferred to play h4, and this is the move I give to my students because I'm just a little bit worried if they take here first, they go rook g8, they might accidentally move the bishop, and then there's a checkmate on g2. So I thought it was better to do the other move order just to make sure you don't blunder mate. But yeah, this of course works, and after h4, it would actually just transpose, because remember, guys, they can't take the bishop. There's queen e7, checkmate. And okay, I think that was everything, right?
Couple in the Q&A. So can you go back to analyzing e5? I think I saw something from Amaya.
All right, here we are.
What did you think you see?
Gone back in time.
E5. Just tell us in the chat, because it just makes things a bit easier, because we've got quite a lot of material to get through. So what did you think you saw here? It's very okay, and then yeah, I'm not sure. There's no follow up on that. After bishop a3, bishop b4, doesn't white have knight d5?
Bishop a3.
Yes.
Bishop b4, knight d5. Wow, very aggressive. Okay, so if I just start taking, what's happening here? Maybe you can take, and maybe I can be tricky. Could I castle? You take, I'll just take. Maybe I'm okay.
Yeah, I think you are now. And another question on the bishop h6 line after bishop b4, bishop takes b4, knight takes b4. Could you go bishop takes f7, and then if queen takes, you win a pawn?
Blimey, on the bishop h6 line. What you mean straight away here? Or maybe he means bishop a3 line.
Yeah, he means a3.
He's gone bishop a6 now. Okay, he's got it. Fine. Bishop a3. He's confusing me. It's too early in the morning. All right, bishop a3. Right now, what was the idea? Bishop b4. So he wants to go. Bishop a3, bishop d4. He wants to take, and if knight takes, he wants to take on f7, basically. Okay. Yeah, it's an interesting idea. It's a deflection, but again, I think the problem is you don't really want to be trading pieces if you're already material down. You're just kind of doing black's job for them, and so maybe I could even do something like queen takes here. It looks a bit ridiculous, but after takes, I just go for something like king f8, and then just say, okay, what do you want to do? Because your queen's now under attack. If you try to keep your queen, now I'm going to gobble that bishop. All right. So I think maybe this is just a clever way to, if you want a pawn, you can have it. As long as I get to survive, I'm very happy with that. All right. I think that was pretty much everything. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. And this one is quite cool because it's a game I literally played like 2 days ago online. So you get to see myself in action here. I'm playing against some guy who's above about 2,000 rating in a kind of, I think it was a rapid play game. And you can see my opponent doesn't seem to really know opening principles because he's got his queen on e7. He's got pawn on g5. So he's got this massive hole on f5. And so, yeah, he's been a bit silly in terms of development. Like these guys are still not developed. The king's a long way from castling. And so basically white needs to punish him for doing that. So what do you think I played in this game? Bring the timer back.
Oh, pressure.
I love my timer.
Your answers in the chat, everyone, because it's really interesting to see what you're thinking. A few people that haven't submitted answers to us, please do write them in the chat.
Here we go.
But only do it to panelists, please.
This group are really like they're sacrificing, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be careful when you're giving away pieces. If it doesn't work, then you're just behind your material and you won't be able to recover.
Yeah, a lot of sacrifices. Oh dear. Okay, but the majority of people seem to be getting the right answer, which is good to see. All right, 10 more seconds.
Bit of time pressure today. Brendan's waking you up and you've just got out of bed.
Okay, so we have d takes e5 was like the most popular suggestion. We had other things like bishop takes d6, bishop takes f7, knight takes g5. I think we also had a knight d5 in there as well. And we also have, I think, maybe was a pawn to d5 looks like as well suggested. Okay, and also there was a h4. All right, so quite a lot to get through there. Okay, so the most important thing here, guys, is the king's in the center of the board. So that's kind of where our attack should be aimed at, right? We have a rook lined up with the x-ray on the queen and the king. And so anything like h4 usually would be a good move if the king's already committed and castled on the side of the board. But when it's in the middle here, we don't really need to be playing on that side. Things like bishop takes d6, bishop takes f7, knight takes g5, all of these ideas are a little bit too premature. You're just sacrificing unnecessarily, and you're just giving away, your pieces, right? So that's not the best idea. D5 is closing the position. We should never close the position when we have the momentum with initiative. We need to keep the position open, right? Because all our pieces are ready. They're all well placed and ready to strike, and blacks are still in bed and sleeping. We've got to go for it. So yeah, the correct move is to go d takes e5, trying to do exactly that, open up the position. Knight takes e5, knight takes e5, queen takes e5, and now we have a very similar idea to before. Again, this knight d5 motif comes again. All right, so the point is the knight is kind of poisoned. If black takes, it's going to allow us to open up the rook and make a very nasty pin. So in the game, my opponent went king to d8. Again, I kept that momentum going. I kept trying to open the position with pawn to e5. Okay, and now I can take the pawn on d6. So as soon as I've got this pawn, I've already achieved something. I've turned my kind of temporary advantage, where I have a lead in development, into something which is now a permanent advantage. Now I have a material advantage of a pawn up, but also his king is going to be kind of permanently weak. Bishop to d7. And once you have a position like this, where there's lots of weaknesses, then it's good to start, going for a combination, right? A combination is something that's always based on a double attack. Double attacks are very important because if a lot of people I've noticed like to just attack one thing, and I call them like a one-move threat. It's kind of a very much like a bullet or blitz type move. And the problem with doing such a thing, like let's say bishop to b2, is okay, attack the rook, but the rook can just move, and you didn't really achieve so much. So here we're looking for combination. And if you notice that the rook is kind of a vulnerable piece, and also that b6 is a vulnerable square, then you can kind of use them both and hopefully find queen d4 is a nice fork there, which looks like a lot of you guys suggested. Fantastic.
Yeah, we've got a few suggestions of that in the chat.
So queen d4 was played, bishop g7, and then we had a nice little checkmate there to finish the king off. All right. On to the next one, I guess. Or should we switch topic, do you think? Should we just going or
just if you're raising your hand, I'd just ask us in the chat, and then it's easier for now, because we've got quite a lot to get through. We can take some questions at the end. But yeah, Brandon, we could switch slightly. Why not?
Okay. So yeah, we'll leave some, because some of these ones are a lot harder actually. So maybe we can leave those for ones they can look at afterwards.
5 instead was the question. Sorry, just before you move on from Gonzalo. So what about knight takes e5 instead?
Initially, in this position, I guess. Yeah, knight takes e5 would also be working, right? Knight takes e5, just a transposition. After this, you go still knight d5, and that's exactly the same. So that's perfect. Although I tend to have a slightly more preference for this one, just because there's a little bit more forcing. I have, it comes with a threat, but okay, it doesn't really matter too much. Okie dokie. All right, so what should we go on to? Weakest point?
Yeah.
Famous game. I'm sure they've all seen that, so it should be fairly straightforward. Whoops.
If you haven't seen that, then you're
Now you have.
Yep.
I think I skipped ahead.
Black to anyone gets this wrong.
All right. Well, maybe they weren't paying attention. Pretend nothing happened.
Black to play. What should black play here? It's a very common idea in chess. Smashing open your opponent's king side.
Well, they've all got it. They're all hawks.
That's good. Shivan's put a bit more detail. Detail is good. If you can tell us more than one move, then we can see that you've seen very far ahead.
All right, so I guess we'll skip this one then. Okay, yeah, perfect. Knight takes f2 was played in this very famous game by none other than Bobby Fischer himself. And this is all about attacking the weakest point. And so another important moment here is that whenever you feel like you're strategically worse, you need to be dynamic, right? And at the moment, Bobby is definitely strategically worse because his pawn structure is pretty bad. He's got 3 pawn islands, one there, second one here, and the third one on the other side. And white only has 2 pawn islands. And so this guy's also isolated pawn. So if black just makes a simple move like knight back to e5, then he would probably go on to lose the game. So he knew this, of course. He's a very strong player, and so he knew that he needs to be dynamic and try to kind of rock the boat. So he goes knight takes f2, king takes f2, knight to e4 check, king to g1, knight takes e3, queen to d2. And now another very important moment here. He's got a choice. Does he take the bishop or does he take the rook? And sometimes when you're going for attacking play, it's not all about just going for material. You're kind of the main idea is to go for the king, right? You've got to be consistent with your plan. So here he decides to take the bishop to eliminate a very key defender of the king. King takes, pawn to d4, making way for this bishop to come into the game. Bishop check, king to f1, queen to d7, just lining up queen to h3. And then we had this very nice finish, queen f2, check, king g1. I'm sure you guys have all seen this before. Fischer then played rook to e1, check. what a move that is. The point is, if queen takes, we have queen to g2 checkmate. And if rook takes, then we can just take on d4 with this very unpleasant pin. And queen g2 is coming next, basically. Okay, so that's attacking the weakest point. Now we're going to do the opposite and attack the strongest point. Hopefully I don't mess up the answer here. Okay, perfect. So here he's playing against another very strong player, against Reshevsky. And this has come from an accelerated dragon opening. And black has played this move knight to a5 kind of prematurely, right? He's not finished development. The bishop on c8 is still sitting there. And he also has no pawns in the center. So how do you think Bobby punished him? All right, so yeah, everyone knows it's a famous game, and they're all excited. They're all rushing to to throw in their suggestion, like I've got it. And what they don't realize is that I've tricked them. You got to play the first move, and then your suggestion will work. But it doesn't work straight away.
Slow down.
Oh yeah, they're so eager. They're like, oh, I've seen this before, and then boom, sacrifice. Nope.
Just want to give away your pieces. It's all right if it works, but you've got to be doubly sure, otherwise you risk just being material down. The Fisher gambit. So what should white play here? Suggestions, please.
Well, looks like we've got answers from the majority of people.
Good. Ed's given us some detail. So is Gonzalo. Detail is good.
We have a H4. Blimey, Harry's off. It's a bit early in the day for Harry, but I guess not if you're Simon Williams. It's never too early to get Harry going.
Harry the H1.
He's off already. Okay, yes, a lot of good suggestions here. But yeah, a lot of people kind of wanted to go straight away bishop takes f7, which is kind of the key idea. But of course, it doesn't quite work at the moment because the queen has plenty of squares. So you'll see why that is in just a second. So the key move is to first go pawn to e5, just to gain the space in the center and punish black for not having any of his own pawns in the central squares. Knight here goes back to e8. And now we see this fantastic move, bishop takes f7 check. And the point is, if, well, king or, doesn't really matter actually, king or rook takes, then knight to e6 is the follow-up. And all of a sudden the queen is trapped since the bishop covers the escape square on b6 as well. So instead, king takes f7, seems like the best try, knight to e6. And the point is, if the king starts to take, then it leads to this forced checkmate, queen d5 check, g4 check, rook g1 check, queen e4, and eventually the black king is going to get mated in a few more moves there. All right, so yeah, e5 was by far the best move. Everything else was not quite as good. Okay. Next one, attacking the Fianchettoed castled king. There he is. So we've taken this position from what looks like the Chinese dragon. For those of you that don't know what the Chinese dragon is, it's basically the Sicilian dragon, but with the rook on b8 instead of c8. So this is a move I used to play a lot myself when I was, back in my days when I was playing for England, and it brought me pretty good success. So it's, yeah, good weapon of mine. All right, but here black has actually misplayed the opening, and he's played, he's taken Harry. Off he goes. And how can we punish black for doing that? Let's get my timer up.
Pressure.
Off we go. White to play. How do we punish them for taking Harry? Is there a Harry in the chat?
I don't think that Harry is here today.
Harry's not here today? Oh no.
Harry the H pawn. Oh,
well, he's gone anyway. He's been sacrificed. Okay.
Oh, some good answers coming through.
Yeah, this group is too strong.
Yeah, try and say your answer even if you're not sure. We want to see everyone's moves and say it to the panelists.
Okay, so it looks like everyone has more or less got the right idea. So the three main moves we had were rook takes h5, g4, and looks like knight to f5 as well. Someone also suggests queen g5 straight away, which is almost right, but kind of the wrong order. Okay, so let's start off with, let's say, knight f5. This is not necessarily a bad idea. If pawn takes, then you get this queen g5 idea, which is similar to the game. But the only downside to playing this one is they could go bishop takes, so it's a little bit, it's not quite as good. G4, I think you can get full credit for that move. I think that's also very strong because the idea is after knight f6, we take, queen check, king goes here, and now we see to deflect the knight. G5 is a little bit inferior because the knight can come back and block the h-file. So instead, knight d5 would be the key move, trying to deflect the knight away, and then we deliver a checkmate. So this would be perfectly fine, I guess. It's just not quite as good as I think as the game, because like they go here, then maybe black can try to survive for a bit longer. So yeah, I think the best move is just to go rook takes h5, and this is very typical idea against the dragon. We just get rid of the knight, force them to take back basically, and then queen g5 is just an easy checkmate, nothing that black can do about that. Okay.
So let's just see if there's any questions there. Please ask questions in the chat if you're not sure. If you haven't seen rook takes h5 idea before, it's very common when you're attacking against the Sicilian. So write it down and remember it, use it in your games. Amaya, is it rook takes a knight and then pawn takes, then queen g5? Yeah, that's right. So rook takes, pawn takes, queen g5, and now black can't defend the threat of queen takes g7 checkmate. Excellent. Yeah, I think everyone understands, so we can move on.
Perfect. All right, now we're going to go on to this Greek gift sacrifice, which again, you're all probably well acquainted with. And I won't spend too much time here because I know, I think, was it Danny Gormali?
Did we did a session on the Greek gift that quite.
They did a session. Okay. Yeah, so I'm sure they all know this. So we'll kind of just briefly walk you guys through then instead. So this Greek gift is a great way to try and exploit a flat castle king structure. So we just looked at a fianchettoed pawn structure, and we noticed back from this one, the key idea against a fianchettoed structure is to build up this kind of battery attack with a bishop and a queen in order to trade off one of black's main defenders. So this one, the key idea is just to sacrifice the bishop, draw the king out like this. We'll look at what happens if they go king g6 in another example. But let's say they go king to g8, then we have this queen h5, which is a very common idea. And now we can see that the e5 pawn actually is a great attacker because it stops knight coming back to f6 and defending. So whenever you're going for a Greek gift, it's very important you look for a few different ways that black can try to defend. The first one is if they can try to go king to g6. So you're always going to be careful, make sure they can't do that. The second idea is in this position, you've got to make sure they can't get anything on the diagonal to defend. If it's a bishop or a queen, something like that.
Yeah, quite often I see black playing bishop f5, and then that doesn't work, and people haven't realised that. So
yeah, exactly. The other one is make sure like there's nothing that can take you, like a bishop, for example, or a knight that could come to like f6 and defend that way. So you've got to keep in mind, as long as those things don't work, then you should be able to. The Greek gift should be working. Okay, rook e8, and then the best way to finish the game off here is just to take this guy first. Now give the checks, and that would lead to a forced checkmate. Okay, so that's pretty easy. Now let's look at this position, and just be warned, I have tricked you. So it's white to move. What do you think is the best move here for white? Let's get my timer on.
Maybe give them two minutes.
2 minutes? Oh, it feels like so long.
Oh,
they're all fast. I'm sure they'll figure it out.
Excellent.
No, I mean, they're all
white to play, and Brandon did warn you. He's tricked you.
Someone doesn't believe me. They went for it anyway.
It's good. Don't always trust your opponent. It's like when people sacrifice material against you. Don't be afraid. Take it unless you can see a reason why not to.
This is a very mean question. Ooh, someone found it. Very impressive. Very nice.
White to play and find the best move, Maya.
Theo trusts me. He's just going to castle. Thank you, Theo. It means a lot. But don't trust me that much. All right, so plenty of suggestions coming through. A lot of people are just developing normally, which is, yep, fine. Nothing necessarily wrong with that. Like 92 things, castling, all that type of stuff looks quite logical. But we do actually miss our chance to strike. So although it's not necessarily a bad move, it's also not the best. C4, again, is not, it's okay. But again, I want to try and target the king. So not quite the right idea. H4 was a very popular suggestion once I mentioned that I tricked you guys. And so, yeah, you're very keen to get Harry on his way. I think the issue, though, is they can maybe just go H6. And after that, I don't really see a good follow-up. And so, again, we've kind of maybe moved Harry unnecessarily. So it wasn't actually that move. So the first thing we have to understand is, well, why does this move not work? And this is actually a very good way to find the best move in any given position. Is first look at why the most obvious move doesn't work, and then you might have a better chance of finding the solution. Because if I ask you in this position, what's the solution? Very, very difficult to find the move. Like, it doesn't matter how strong you are, Grandmaster, doesn't matter. Even I probably wouldn't find the move if I looked at it from this position. The only chance I've got is I first look at what happens after takes, check. Okay, King G8 is easy, just Queen H5. Black can't defend, so he has to go King G6, Queen to G4, F5, en passant, and E5. This is kind of the critical variation where Black is trying to get some sort of counterplay, get pieces to help defend his king. And after Knight to E6 check, everything looks good so far. But after King just takes F6, we're kind of struggling to see, like, have a good follow-up here, right? If we take their queen, they can just take our queen. And if we do something else, like give a check somewhere, they can just take our knight. And so we're kind of struggling to find a good move. Now, if we could play the move bishop takes E5 check, force them to take the king, and then bring our queen back with check, all of a sudden, our queen has been removed from the pin, and therefore we can take the queen next, ensuring that white gets a big advantage. But the issue, of course, is after this, they're not forced to take the king, they can take with the knight. And so therefore the whole variation doesn't work. So now that we know that was the main issue, that knight can take on E5, we can kind of go back to the starting position and come up with the idea. There you go, everyone's starting to get it now. Pawn to B5.
Can you just say what happens after King H6? Sorry to interrupt. Just go back a second.
King H6.
That line you just showed, if somebody was asking.
King H6 looks a little bit inferior, just because maybe I'm now do the bishop C1 idea, and I'm just allowing me to get another piece into the attack. So it looks very scary. But maybe it's also, I don't know, maybe black can also survive there. I'm a little bit unsure. I think just King G6 is a lot simpler, because they're gonna have to go King G6 at some point anyway. So it just seems more, logical to do that. Queen G5 at the very end. I think he meant this position. King takes F6. If Queen G5, he can just take, Anyway, so B5 is the solution. We first need to get rid of this knight, and after knight to A5, now we can use the Greek gift. And we see after E5, we do the same variation, but this time we can take Queen E2, and now we just win the queen. So a bit of a tricky question, but I thought it was a nice, important one. Not everything.
What about what takes en passant Queen G6, F5, Queen G5? Question from William.
Queen G, so not taking en passant. So it means like what here? So I think he means Queen. You said Queen G5, but I think maybe he means Queen G3 potentially. Notice maybe.
Yeah.
Queen G3, huh? What would we do here?
Maybe F4.
Maybe F4. Yeah, F4. Okay, I have to go back. And maybe now I should just give back some material just to get out of this, get my queen to safety. Maybe I should just take and go Queen B6 check. And at least now you're not threatening any particularly nasty discovered checks. So yeah, queen g3 is a good idea. This is sometimes a move that often works in the Greek gift, but maybe black can survive after f4. So it's just, yeah, this line's more forcing, right? We just take en passant, we get another piece into the attack, and yeah, it just wins by force basically. Okay, yeah, black does get quite a bit of material back, to be fair, for the queen. So that's why I've only put, okay, you can't see the variation box on the side here, but I've only put a decisive advantage for white, not a winning advantage, because black does get a lot of material back, but needless to say, it's still a big advantage. Okay, now another one, but this one again, I'm going to flick through quite quickly because it's quite a tricky puzzle. It's something I played a few years ago in the Gold Coast Open in Australia. And here my opponent has just played move bishop to a3. So straight away, I understand his threat is bishop to b2, try and trap my rook. And the downside to his move is he's no longer defending the g5 square. So as soon as he did that, my first thought was, can I get the Greek gift trick? But again, you've got to calculate accurately, because if they just take, check, king g8, queen h5, now we have this scenario where they can actually defend queen c2. Right? I could try rook e4, trying to use this interference idea, but he can actually just sacrifice his queen, force me to lose my important knight. And after this, it's a little bit unclear. Black has got a lot of material for for the queen, so it's not quite clear whether I'm winning here or not. So in the game, I decided to go knight to g5, and this turned out to be far stronger, just keeping pieces on the board. And this is a very important idea as well. Whenever you're trying to calculate lines, if your main line does not work, just tweak it a little bit. Try reordering the variations and see if it makes a difference. Right. So before we tried to take and then go knight g5, it didn't end up working because of this queen c2. So now we're going to go back to the original position and just start with knight g5 instead. And this turns out to be far stronger. So if you want to play through the rest of this game, probably that's a good thing you can do after the session. All right, let's move on then. This is a nice kind of easy one, but yeah, famous position from the French exchange variation. So it just goes to show that French exchange is not always a draw. And here we have the legend Victor Korchnoi with the black pieces. How did he exploit White's castled king? Well, let's get my timer going.
Pressure. Back to play.
All right, make sure you get your coordinates right, though. Otherwise, I've got to try and... There you go, good.
Bring all your pieces to the party. People still trying to give away material. Just gotta show a bit of patience so you've got all your pieces in the right position.
The threat is stronger than the execution.
Indeed.
Remember that one. You guys are too eager to just straight away go to the execution part. But all right, so what we got here, we've got bishop e6. That's a very sensible move in terms of just trying to finish the development, but we want to try and attack the king, so we've probably got to do something a little bit more aggressive. Knight g4 is also suggested, but I think he can just take, yeah? Yeah. Looks like a free knight.
Thank you very much.
Bishop takes f2. I'll have that one as well, thank you.
Bishop takes
generous.
Great.
Bishop d7 is also suggested. Okay, that's similar to bishop e6, a little bit too slow. We have something much stronger here. Again, bishop e6 also a bit too slow. Queen d8 is also very slow. Your queen's already very nicely placed. Why is she going back home? Nothing to be scared of. You got to go in. You got to attack. So like the two main suggestions were both bishop takes h3 and queen g3. So kind of both are the right idea. So let's have a look at the most forcing move first. Take on h3. They have to really take, I guess. Queen to g3. King has to go here because remember this is a pin. We give a check. King comes here. And well, how do we win though? That's the problem. Maybe we can go like knight g4, but we're still not really threatening anything. So although it's not necessarily a bad suggestion, it does seem like not as good as what Korchnoi played in the game.
Look for a better move.
Exactly. So now again, we need to switch the variation, right? The order of the moves. Instead of taking straight away, just go queen g3, and this just simply ends the game, right? Bishop takes h3 comes anyway, and yeah, you don't have to sacrifice any material, which is always nice. Okay, we've got like, what's this? Bishop takes f2, then queen takes g3 at the end. Okay, but let's say, I think he means this one. Bishop takes f2, rook takes queen g3. Problem with this one is I just go knight f1, and I can get pieces back around my king and stabilize. So you kind of sacrificed prematurely there. And anyway, it's hard to argue with the great man Viktor Korchnoi. You know, he played queen g3, so I'm sure he knows what he's doing much stronger than I am. So the game, his opponent played bishop f5, and then very important part of attacking principles, you've got to use all of your pieces. So here Korchnoi went rook to e2.
We have a quick question there. What about knight d4 for white after queen g3?
Yeah, actually, white played knight d4 here in the game, so it's probably something similar. And Korchnoi just took, actually. And now if you take, there's just yeah, you lose your queen with check. So if you play knight d4 straight away, same thing. I would assume. Yeah, just take.
So we're attacking the queen. So even though our queens can be captured with.
Yeah, exactly. They can take, but we're going to just win the whole house. So that's not much good.
And a couple
King h1, yeah. King h1's a good suggestion, actually. Trying to get out the pin. So now what Korchnoi would have done, I assume at least, is just take on f2. So now at least he's a pawn up, and then he'll have still this threat. Whoops. Our bishop takes, h3 is coming. So and sometimes that's all you need to do. Sometimes the whole point of having a strong attack is just to win some sort of material. Even just winning a pawn is often enough. Then you can start trading down, liquidating, and just win the game. All right, so I've got everyone's answer everyone's questions there. Okay.
Yeah, what's sorry, just one question because Joseph had his hand up. Bishop takes h3. First, g takes h3, queen g3, king h1, queen takes h3, king g. I think I think you covered that, Brandon. Joseph,
yeah, knight g4. He wanted to go rook e1 at the very end, but it's white's move, so he would have a move to try and yeah, do something. Yeah, so he wanted to do this one, knight to g4. The idea is rook e1, which is quite a clever idea. Rook takes as bishop takes f2. But the problem is it's white to move here, so maybe white can find a way to survive. Not sure how he's going to do that. Maybe just bishop f5 maybe, and try to take some material. Get rid of some of the attackers might be a good idea. Or maybe you can just take here and try to swap everything off. Try to liquidate. Maybe that's also a possibility. So it's not a bad suggestion, but yeah, this is just much stronger. All right, so now we're going to come to another very famous game. This is a favorite of mine. We have Nigel Short, famous English grandmaster, playing white pieces here, and you know, black is pretty much completely tied up. All the pieces are very kind of very passive, but it's hard to see how white actually gets a killer blow. How does he make progress here? So it's white to move. You've got to find kind of the right move and also the kind of the plan to go with it.
Shibam, I'm very impressed. You got in there even before Brandon started.
Blimey, these guys are good, aren't they? All right.
Yeah, they know their stuff. And if you don't know these things, then really, I'd advise you to learn your classics because you know you can learn so much from games of the past. Cameron knows it. Krish knows it. Gonzalo. Yeah,
I should have mentioned Nigel Short. I think that jogs their memory too much.
Well, he's always showing off about this move in Olympiads and so proud, which you should be. It's an amazing move. And I think once you've seen this idea, it kind of opens up the idea for your games, which is why it's important to study the classics.
They've all got it.
Cameron saw it a week ago.
Oh, nope, we've got some sacrifices as well.
Oh, someone wants to play knight g5, but that falls for mate in 1.
Whoops. Let's pretend it was a mouse slip. But yeah, knight g5, if it wasn't for mate in 1, would also be a good idea. All right, so yeah, most of you guys seem to have got them. Found the solution. The only other suggestion was this rook takes f7, but again looks maybe a little bit premature. I can just take. Okay, you get one pawn back, but I just go rook g7, and you can't take on e8 because my queen's defending. So then white would just be losing there. Yeah. Yeah. So the main idea here is to use all of your pieces. Right, and also you can maybe put this in the category of exploit the weaknesses. And black is very weak on the dark squares because he has this kind of fianchettoed structure, but he's lacking the bishop to go with it. And so Nigel noticed that and decided, well, all my other pieces are kind of tied up. The queen, the rooks, the rooks are kind of tied to each other. The knight is tied to defending the mate. He doesn't really have any good pawn breaks. G4 just would lose the knight, and so he needs to bring another piece into attack. He goes, well, the only guy I've got left is the king. Right? Here he is. Yeah, I've got one too. There he is. Although mine's a USB king.
Oh, okay.
So mine has a better memory than yours.
Oh.
So yeah, king h2. You got to remember sometimes the king can be a good attacking piece. Usually not when the queens are on the board, but okay, this is a kind of slight exception. Now Jan Timman surely didn't know what Short was up to because he went rook c8. So he just thinks that he's just trying to, kind of pass his turn, king g3. So he still didn't really realize what he's up to. And it's probably only when he went king f4, he's like, now I know what you're doing. And now it's kind of too late. Look how he tries to, in a panic, he tries to start attacking things. And Nigel's like, well, now it's too late. I'm getting in h6. Right. And if he goes king h7, this doesn't really help because we can just take this pawn anyway. There's a nice little pin here. And after say something like king here, just check king here. And now king f6 is quite a nice way to finish things off. G7 can't be stopped. All right, so remember, always good to use your pieces.
That's fantastic.
All of your pieces.
Brandon, it's important that we finish on time, so it might be good if we just go through the principles now that we've discussed.
Sure.
Got 2 minutes left, and yeah, this is fantastic, so thank you. So let's go through. We've got momentum, use your pieces, maximum activity, and exploit weaknesses. It's very important in your games to apply these principles.
Yes, exactly. So these are things you should always be looking out for whenever you're trying to attack in chess. If you do that, you've got a much better chance of finding the right approach to any given position.
Yeah, I think people are too quick to sacrifice pieces.
Yeah.
Got to work out whether it works, because against strong opposition, you'll just be behind on material. So that idea of bringing all your pieces into the game is important. Very important.
Yeah, as a general rule, if you can, when you're sacrificing, it has to be concrete. If you're sacrificing, you're not quite sure whether you are winning or not, you shouldn't go for it. It's too risky. You should just, if you can see that your sacrifice, like in the Greek gift ones, was working and you just delivers force mate, then yeah, sure, go for it. But if you can't see that it's working by force, you can't calculate it properly, you shouldn't go for it. Like, for example, my game I had against, what was that one? This one here, right? I didn't sacrifice on h7 because I saw this variation and I wasn't sure whether I was winning here or not. So I decided it's too risky and I didn't go for it. I just decided to keep the pieces on the board instead.